Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. We've got our preview for the college football playoff semifinal at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. We've got the Ohio State Buckeyes against the Texas Longhorns. Joe, we have recapped Ohio State's last game. We have not done a Texas video yet, but they get a win against Clemson at home where they wasn't, was a little nervous late, but they get the job done there, and then they get the job done in a crazy overtime game against Arizona State. But the level of competition, no disrespect to those two schools, is getting higher faster for Texas. Ohio State comes in with that huge win against Oregon and a very similar game against Tennessee, Joe, where they struck first and never looked back. Coming into the game, step one for Texas has to be to not lose this game early on, based on what's happened in the last two Ohio State games.
Sean, I think Pete Kakowski, Texas's defensive coordinator, he's been one of the better D coordinators in college football silently over the years. I think last year he did a terrific job, albeit I don't think the personnel was quite as developed as it was this year. I think with the D line they have, particularly Colin Simmons, the fact he's only a freshman is pretty scary. And we've seen Texas before in a Big Ten context. They boat raced by Michigan Wolverines in week 2. But since then, I think they've been really impressive overall defensively. I think they know what they have to do. I think they're going to adapt the game plan that Michigan's laid out so many times, and Penn State to a degree as well, which is, listen, we're going to give you 20. We're not going to give you 60. If you watched Oregon and Tennessee's defensive game plan, we're going to give you 60 to 80 yards, which is that's 101 on how to get blown out by Ohio State when you're not that bad a team, which, to be very clear, Oregon and Tennessee were very good teams. So between Trey Moore, Anthony Hill Jr., Colin Simmons, I think these guys need to show up. I think they have to make open field tackles. I think they can't let Will Howard run around. And I really do believe Texas is going to stop Ohio State's run game early. I don't think Ohio State's going to have success early by establishing the run, which is something since that O-line's been banged up from the middle of October, Sean, they haven't been able to do really. They've used the run game as a complement in the games they've been successful in, but not necessarily their bread and butter. It's going to be getting to Will Howard, and it's going to be not letting Jeremiah Smith, Cardell Tate, and Emeka Ibuka completely torch Texas's secondary.
And Joe, when Texas has only lost to one team this year, that was to Georgia twice, at home against Carson Beck, and then in the SEC championship against Beck, and then Gunnar Stockton. You just talked about Texas replicating Michigan's strategy of beating Ohio State. You have to think that Ohio State would do the same thing in terms of replicating Georgia's efforts against Texas. There has to be something to that. That Texas has played a really good schedule this year, beating a ton of good teams, but pretty clear that Georgia has their number. So, do you think Ohio State will go that route and trying to slow down Texas, at least offensively?
I think to a degree, Sean, the biggest factor in this game, and I know all the Instagram and Twitter warriors have already pointed this, and they're screaming in their heads, Quinn Ewers. This is probably his most important game as a Texas Longhorn. He's won the final Big 12 title for Texas. He's won plenty of big games against Oklahoma. He won the first game against A&M. His legacy in terms of a Texas legend is secured, but to be a Texas god, he has to win this game, particularly with the backstory that he was at Ohio State for 1 year. And, the way, even though he ended up at Texas, the way he spurred them toward the end of the Tom Herman era, I think that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I do think it's ultimately fine by now, but I really believe if he wins this game, he's forever solidified. Probably if there were a Mount Rushmore of Texas players in our lifetime, you'd probably have Colt McCoy up there, maybe a Sam Ehlinger, but Quinn Ewers would probably be number 1 or 2 on that Mount Rushmore. So to win this, he's going to have to be very smart. I think he's been smart. He's going to have to hit the deep ball, though. I think Ohio State's going to try to take away a lot of the 10, 15-yard passes. I think the underneath ones are a given with the misdirection Sarkisian uses. I think they're going to take their chances with the deep ball. And that includes Denzel Burke and Davison Igbeneusen. Denzel Burke struggled a little in the first Oregon game, but since then I haven't seen much besides one pass interference against Michigan. I think Igbeneusen's the guy that's going to have to really lock in on these deep throws. Can he pick Quinn Ewers off, and can he run a a Matthew Golden off the ball enough so Texas doesn't hit a big play. Because if Texas hits a big play, this is another game shot. I hate to say this. We're scoring first for either team, kind of game state stealer team. So allow Texas to not score the first TD. Davison Igbinosun and Denzel Burke are the keys to that. Let's be real honest here, Sean.
And for Texas, Joe, I think the Quinn Ewers narrative has really been a roller coaster this year. I mean, he has not been very good in many, many games this year. He's had a couple really good performances, including the Arizona State game. If you remember, they were a 4th and 12 away from not being here. But when the lights were the brightest, when the game was on the line, he delivered an absolute bullet for a touchdown on 4th and 12. So I don't think the moment will be too big for him. I think, again, this is a kind of a big deal that this thing is being played at Jerry's World in Dallas. Like, it should be a majority Texas crowd here. And in terms of Ohio State, I think step one for Texas is do not fall behind by a couple scores in the first quarter. That's what Tennessee and Oregon did, and ultimately they were never really ever to come back. Texas did start off really well against Arizona State, and then they let them back in the game, and the targeting call, and like they could have lost that game. So maybe Texas just wants it to be close early on, maybe close at halftime. Don't be up by a lot, don't be down by a lot. Take the game as it goes. I don't think Ohio State will put this thing away early like they did the last two, but Quinn Ewers proved a lot to me in that last game against Arizona State. And Joe, I mean, people are going to forget real quick about those bad performances earlier this year if he can get them to a national championship. And he's got a great opportunity to do so. A lot of rumors about whether he'll go to the draft, maybe even the transfer portal next year, because they're likely to give the rest of the program to Arch Manning next year. But Quinn Ewers has still got the end of his story to tell here at Texas, and he's got a really huge chance to stick it to the team that he used to be a part of in front of what should be majority home fans. And Texas is really flying under the radar here. They had a good draw to get to where they are right now, and they almost didn't, but I don't think the story on Texas is quite done yet.
No, I think similar to Ohio State too, Sean, the running game's not going to be as big a factor as people want it to. Ohio State fans and Ryan Day in particular want to run the ball. That was Urban Meyer's bread and butter on a lot of his teams that were really successful. Same with Texas. Sark ultimately wants to run the ball. That's what his blueprint was for that offense at Alabama with Najee Harris. I think Wisner and Jaden Blue have been pretty good the whole year. I don't think Texas can really rely on that. I think
they've been good, Joe, but I think they're the 4th best running back duo that's left.
That's my problem, Sean. I think both teams can't win running the ball. I think they can close the game running the ball. I don't think they're going to get to a lead running the ball. So it's going to come down to which pass defense is better, which D coordinator is more disciplined, and I think between Knowles and Pekowski, these are two guys that do not want big plays, period. That's going to be the biggest factor. If you're going to ask 3 questions about who won, I'll ask these 3. If I'm going to ask 3 questions about revealing a winner, it's going to be who led up the most big plays, who won the turnover battle, and did Quinn Ewers hit 1 or 2 deep shots when the game is still in contention. I think if you have the right combo answers there, Texas could certainly win this. I think the 6-point spread at the Cotton Bowl, albeit Jerry World, is a little generous toward the Buckeyes. I do think they've been the better team. I mean, that's not even a thing. That's a no. Texas fans should be able to admit that. So what's it going to come down to, Sean? It's really those 3 factors right there.
I'm going to turn it back to Ohio State as we wrap this preview up here, Joe. We've heard this saying from Ryan Day more times than we can count, leave no doubt. In close games, they have been extremely timid and second-guessed themselves and really beat themselves. They've beaten a lot of good teams by a lot of points. We've talked about it a lot here. If it's close, they're probably not going to win. Yeah. Just but the way that Texas just played a close game and really, really, executed in tough moments, season on the line. Ohio State really hasn't had a season on the line moment yet. The last close game that they played in, they lost to a 7-5 team that had really poor quarterback play. So I do have Ohio State winning. I do think it will be by 10. I do think Texas won't get blown out of the blocks early like some of these other teams are. I think that's probably all they're really going into the game trying to do. Have it be a game at halftime. Then you can make adjustments from there, see if yours can hit a big ball. But I just think Ohio State has one too many difference makers. I think they will get a double-digit lead at some point in the third quarter, and they'll hold off any sort of resistance from Texas. I'm going to go 34-24 Buckeyes.
Sean, one thing you mentioned before I give my final prediction. If any team has a two-score lead, they're not going to give it up. And that includes Texas.
I think Ohio State is more likely to get that, though.
Yes, 1,000%. Now, I do think Texas with a two-score lead is just as lethal because they can run out the clock. They can do enough with the misdirection. They could get guys like Jaden Blue and Matthew Golden, and Ryan Wingo, who's also, Jeremiah Smith's the story of the freshman receivers. I think Ryan Wingo, if Jeremiah Smith didn't exist, Ryan Wingo would be talked about. Not necessarily the way Jeremiah is, but certainly would be getting as many followers, would be getting as many praises nationally as Jeremiah Smith. But to the actual game itself, Sean, it's really hard for me to pick against Ohio State. I think they win this game 38-21. I think it's not necessarily a blowout, but they keep them at a steady distance. But my cop-out for this is, Sean, if it is close, I do think Texas will pull it out. If it's decided, this is how I'll put it. Ohio State 38-21 is my official prediction. But I do think if the game is decided by a touchdown or less, it will be Texas lifting the trophy and heading to Atlanta. So this is probably the best matchup for Ohio State overall, as I've previewed. I think Texas is going to keep everything in front of them. I think their misdirection on offense is going to be something that Ohio State will be prepared for, but in about a week and a day, it's really hard to prepare for. We saw Wink Martindale, who's been in the NFL with 4 first-round picks on defense, not really be able to figure that out. So it's gonna. There's going to be a lot of ooh-eyeing in this game. That's my most secure prediction.
Yeah, the one thing that made me pick Ohio State here, Joe, is I think Burt Auburn for Texas obviously had a tough game against Arizona State. You saw the ultra-long pep talk speech from Sark. Really weird that happened and ultimately didn't work because he missed. But I do think Texas has the slight edge in a close game, but because of that, he missed 2 pretty easy kicks against Arizona State indoors. Now, Cotton Bowl's indoors too, but it's not like the weather was, crazy or anything like that. But I just think Ohio State will be too much in the end. I think we'll see basically this kind of go the way that a lot of Ohio State games went in the regular season, where they were better. They didn't quite execute as sharp as they wanted to in the first half, and then it ended up being a big win. But it should be a pretty good one down there. This is Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And the winner, Joe, will play the winner of Notre Dame and Penn State in the national championship game in Atlanta. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode. Please check out the other videos if you haven't already. We've got tons of football previews, some basketball stuff coming out on the channel. So please check it out when you get the chance. We'll see you next time.